We are on page 31. Ever his consciousness and the vision grew. They took an ampler sweep, a loftier flight. He passed the border marked for matter's rule and passed the zone where thought replaces life. Out of this world of signs, suddenly he came into a silent self where world was not and looked beyond into a nameless vast. These symbol figures lost their right to live. All tokens dropped our sense can recognize. There the heart beat no more at body's touch. There the eyes gazed no more on beauty's shape. So this is a description of slowly how his consciousness is moving not just beyond the physical and beyond now the subtle physical, widening, because as one rises higher and higher, the vision becomes wider, the sweep becomes broader, so that one can take in a much vaster truth within the consciousness. Usually it is that we see truth according to our vision. When our vision is small, narrow, for us the truth is defined by what we see. I see this much, so that much is true for me. When I can see further, and I have risen higher, I see a broader, vaster landscape. And in that context, what I saw earlier, for instance, if I am down below, on the ground, a tree is very big. When I climb up the slope of the hill, the same tree seems much smaller because I see much more my vision encompasses much more. So the perspectives change, the value of things change as our consciousness grows. Otherwise, what we see is not wrong, it's just a very small portion of reality. So here, he is growing in his consciousness. He's moving out his soul, which was, as this canto is called, the yoga of the soul's release. The soul had entered as if into the cage of ignorance, unconsciousness, and over it was the strong walls of the ego. And so you say, this is what I see, this is what I know, this is what I believe, this is what is the truth. Once that wall is broken of the ego, the ignorance loses its control over us. Usually the ignorance controls us. The field of experience widens. We are part of the universe. The divine is within. The divine is not only above, he is also within. And so we see that same divine at play, manifesting himself in more and more, wider and wider, higher and higher levels of expression, of manifestation. So he is moving out of the border marked for matter's rule, moving away from the mere material world, moving away from the world of the senses, the physical senses that connects our body to the life experiences of touch and smell and so on, moving away from the understanding and what one might say conclusions that mind draws from what we see. So body, life, mind, usually that is our domain. He has broken out of that. As he is rising, just like when we climb, the landscape, the forms, the shapes is replaced by an open sky. a vaster field of extension and space. In the same way, our consciousness is no longer limited by immediate expressions and experiences. Out of this world of science, because this is for us what is reality. I see something, I see a form, I see a shape, I hear a sound, I taste something, and this is how I relate to reality. And this gives us a kind of a sense of, you might say, we feel confident that I am alive, I live in a body, I live surrounded by certain physical truths and experiences. Oh.
We can explain this more and pass the zone where thought replaces life.
Yes.
Mind.
Body, life, mind.
Oh, okay.
See, the physical body is inert. Life gives to the body its first expressions of response. Then mind explains those responses. So there is a kind of a gradation. Now, out of that, we move into a vaster and vaster field of consciousness when we are no longer bound by this lower nature. He is no longer bound by his lower nature. So these, out of this world of science, suddenly he came into a silent self. There is pure consciousness, pure spirit. We don't need to experience reality through contacts of touch or smell or taste. It is pure state of the spirit and consciousness, where world as we know it was not. It's not a world of illusion. It's not that this world is illusion. It is simply that we relate to things when our mind can explain what we are going through. But when we have gone beyond the mind, there is another force, there is another opening, there is another illumination that takes place. And there is a nameless vast. How do you describe that state? It is the state of just pure consciousness. Therefore, these symbol figures lost their right to live. Then you realize that symbol figures, everything that we see or touch or smell, is a representation of reality. The reality is much greater than the representation. That is why it's a symbol. A symbol is something that you can describe as something finite, but its significance is much vaster than what is the form. So then you say there is a certain layer of truth behind the outer world, and another, and then still another. All these are the different planes of reality, not simply this external world of line and shape and form, which are projections, representations of something much vaster than itself. So you don't relate, you don't say this, say, form is reality. This form represents something much more than what the form seems to be. A flower is not just a flower. A flower is a presence. It's a consciousness. There is a kind of a divine, it's projection of a divine play, a divine plan, which has taken the shape of the flower. So you say the flower is one aspect, one representation. It does not exist by and for itself. Something other than the flower has projected itself in the flower. So in the world of beauty, as Mother said, it is the divine presence that is projecting itself in the world of form, and when that is perfectly transmitted, it becomes beautiful. But beauty by itself is not the form, it's the divine presence in the form. Life is not something that moves. Life is the universal energy. It's a universal energy that is expressed through movements, through bodies, through all kinds of activities. But it's not the activity for and by itself. There is something beyond the activity that is making use of that body. So when we realize this, that I am an instrument of a much greater force, my mind or my body or my life is not something that exists by and for itself. It is something that is an instrument of something far vaster than what it seems to be. That is why the symbols are simply representations. Reality is much greater. These symbol figures, lost their right to live. These symbols are tokens. They are signs. All tokens dropped, our sense can recognize. You go beyond the senses, beyond even the subtle senses, beyond the mind, beyond anything that the mind can define. Knowledge then becomes knowledge by identity. It is not the knower and the known. For a very long time, as I relate to something through my eyes or through my senses, the knower, I am different from what I am seeing. But when this I is an expression of the all, and what I am seeing is also an expression of the all, then there is a sense of an identity. And that, Aurobindo says, is the ultimate knowledge. When you know because you have become what you know. Only then you have the right to knowledge. Direct knowledge is knowledge by identity. So all tokens dropped, our sense can recognize. He's gone beyond that. There the heart beat no more at body's touch. The life responses, the delight of existence. It is a channel through which the movements and energies that make us feel alive, it's a play of the divine force. But when the consciousness has risen far beyond, usually this play becomes still. And Aurobindo speaks of that, Mother speaks of that sense of stillness, the sense of quietness, that is above all things, that is below all things. It sustains all things from below. And it is to that sense of stillness above all expressions and experiences of activities and change or speech or knowledge as the mind knows it. The ultimate, you might say, sense of fulfillment even for the mind is to arrive at a sense of complete stillness, complete silence. Then there is the sense of infinity, vastness, quietness. This was part of the Jnana Yoga. Aurobindo was a Jnana Yogi when he started his journey. He says, a journey of Jnana, of knowledge. So these steps of knowledge, first breaking out of the cage of ignorance and ego. In rare and lucent intervals of hush. Of course, in the beginning, as he said also earlier, these experiences came not in a continuous manner, but at intervals. Slowly these periods would become more and more, you might say, they would last longer, they would not disappear. So, lucent, transmitting light. It's not when the silent mind is silent, it becomes dull. No, when the mind is absolutely silent, it becomes luminous. This is the goal of the Buddha, this is the goal of Shankara. Into a signless region he could soar. This is the goal of signlessness. Nirvana is where there is absolutely extinction of all shape and form and experience. Packed with the deep contents of formlessness, where world was into a single being wrapped. Everything was as if taken within the arms of one. This is the Advaita Yoga, one single consciousness. No division, no separation. It is the ultimate reality that is. And spirit was its own self-evidence. Spirit recognizes spirit. There is not one who recognizes the other. One recognizes itself because the other also is itself. There is nothing but that. All is just that. That sense of, from that is all this diversity, all this multiplicity, all this variety. They come projecting into this world of material and separative manifestations. As we climb upwards, the multiplicity, the divisions become expressions of the one. There is no opposition actually between the many and the one. And spirit was its own self-evidence. The Supreme's gaze looked out through human eyes. The identification of the human consciousness with the Supreme, with the Divine. All we need to do is to look at one of Aurobindo's photographs, and you see that the physical form is not just a physical form. It's not the eyes, it's the gaze behind the eyes. It's the consciousness behind the gaze. The spirit behind that consciousness is the Supreme. And that actually is what the physical form is also a token of. What you are within, the state of consciousness you are inside, projects itself on the outside. It shows itself on the outside. It's not line and curve and shape. It's a state of being that you are in. And that reflects itself on the outside. So the Supreme's gaze looked out through human eyes and saw all things and creatures as itself. The sense of the unity that sustains all diversity, because it's the same consciousness. And that is what has been sometimes said, I am he, soham. That is what you are, tat tvamasi. There is no I, there is no you, you are only that. That is a word. You have to use a word because you have to use some kind of an intellectual form of expression, but that is as neutral a form that you can perhaps use. That is similar to tat. And this is the phrase used in the Upanishads. You are that. You are not different from that. It's your sense of ego that creates the division. The sense of ego which is based on ignorance. And that is for a long time, Mother says, it is in a sense our protection also. For a very long time we are not ready to be completely blended with the vast universe. We are not ready for it. We live in our small cocoons of existence. Once we have fulfilled that journey, you have to break out. There is a time. There's a time when the bud comes out as a flower. It has its own pattern, its own rhythm. There is a moment in the evolution of consciousness. and saw all things and creatures as itself, and knew all thought and word as its own voice. Everything was itself. All expression was itself. Their unity is too close for search and clasp. Because that is the goal of love or closeness, is to become one. The two become one. But when you realize that beyond all becomings, there is no longer any searching, there is no becoming, there is only existence, there is only reality. He's reached that space. And love is a yearning of the one for the one. And beauty is a sweet difference of the same. Love is not a yearning of the one for the other. All is the one. Beauty is a difference in the sense that beauty has to have a form. There has to be an outline. There has to be some kind of delineation. And that is for the delight of manifestation. It doesn't mean it is not part of the one, but for the play, for the delight of existence, there is this sense of differentiation. And oneness is the soul of multitude. This is the ultimate supramental truth Aurobindo speaks of, that matter is spirit, the many are the one. There is no opposition between unity and diversity. It is as we come down to the lower levels of consciousness and our nature becomes smaller and narrower, we make the sense of separativity, and I am separate from you, I am different from you. I may be linked to you by ties of sympathy or friendship or love, or I may have the opposite feelings. This is just a play. But in fact, everything is the one. And yet, for the sake of the play of manifestation, there is the many, and they are not contrary to each other. They may seem contrary to the mind, they are not contrary to the spirit.
Here, and beauty is a sweet difference. Why?
Because it is beautiful. There is a delight. Beauty is one of the, as he says it in one of his texts, the term Ananda is a triple term of beauty, love and joy. So where there is beauty, there is joy. And where there is joy, there is love. And so it is sweet. The sense of the delight of existence. The divine takes joy, why should he not? It's not that he is we sometimes, prefer to think of the divine as something far away, something infinite, vast, cut off from our world of everyday experience. But this world is he. He has made it. We are he. Only we don't know it. We choose not to know it. We've closed our eyes, our minds, our hearts, our spirits, and we say, I am not he. But when we can open up from within, when our consciousness starts to grow, to evolve, and connects itself to that from where it came, there is no sense of separation, there is only simply the play. There is in the poem, The Rishi, it's a simple but very strong message that the Rishi gives to the king. From him we come, to him we go, desire eternally. So the sense of that longing, that love is there, but it is the longing of the one for the one, because he is who we are. So it might sound a little contradictory to the mental understanding, but then when we go beyond the mental understanding, we say, but there is nothing but that. That's why oneness is the soul of multitude. That is, the many is the one. There all the truths unite in a single truth. And all ideas rejoin reality. Because ideas are, you might say, projections, formulations, expressions. Each one contains a seed of light, because thought is, after all, an instrument of light. A lesser light, but still light. But it has its own line of, you might say, it proceeds along its own line. It's following a sense in the world of mind and thought. It's as if one level of thought leads to the next and then to the next. It is A leading to B and B leading to C. But finally, it starts from that. What is the reason that you formulate an idea? The idea is that you want to know the truth. It is an instrument of truth. In our minds, it is an incomplete, limited instrument. But in that world, that limitation is gone. So that quest for light, that quest for knowledge, that quest for reality, because knowledge is reality. Knowledge is not something that you formulate in your abstract notion. Knowledge is experience. When it is experience, when you become that, only then you have the true knowledge. And that is reality. That is what is realization. So, there, knowing herself by her own termless self, wisdom supernal, wordless, absolute, sat, uncompanioned in the eternal calm, all-seeing, motionless, sovereign, alone. There is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is a quest. Wisdom is more like a state of having arrived at a state of fulfillment, completion. So there are very, very many wise people, if you like, in the world who have very little knowledge of the mind. Mental knowledge they don't have. It doesn't matter. They are embodiments of a certain inner state of calm or undisturbed illumination. They live in that state. So many saints and sages are like that. So they are not exactly the same, wisdom and knowledge. Wisdom is that final goal of all knowledge. So she is described here. Wisdom knowing herself by her own termless self. The knower is the known. So wisdom also is simply, she sees the play of wisdom in all things, at all times, by her own infinite self. There is no limit to wisdom. All is the play of the supreme wisdom. What we call light, what we call darkness, what we call right, what we call wrong, what we call the lower world and the higher world, all this is part of the Supreme's wisdom. When there are difficulties and problems or wars or clashes, they too are part of the working out. It's a process of the working out of the Divine's wisdom. He knows what He's doing. We say, why is this happening? How can there be things like this going on? We try to judge with our limited faculties of understanding. Their wisdom knows herself by her own infinite faculty of wisdom. So she's undisturbed. She's calm. When I don't understand, I'm disturbed. I ask questions, I want to find answers. I look up this book, I try to ask this person. But if I am living that truth, I am completely undisturbed. And that is the final realization. Always stillness, calm. Therefore, it is absolute. It doesn't need to be expressed in any form. There is one of Aurobindo's last poems, which is called Ascent. The Ascent is divided into two smaller poems. One is called Into the Silence, and the second is called Beyond the Silence. Into the silence is that rising to that state of absolute stillness. The second poem says, bring that silence into your existence, into your life. There is a very difficult, beautiful line there in the second poem. Act in the world with thy being beyond it. That is when you are not disturbed by whatever happens, you are in that state of complete wisdom. That doesn't mean complete inactivity. You take part in everything, as Mother took part in everything, and her being was far beyond what we understood as Mother is doing this and Mother's going there and Mother's playing tennis or working. And yet, do we know what she was, where her consciousness was? It's far, far beyond. It's part of the supreme universal energy of manifestation, far above. And yet she takes part in everything. So to a smaller degree, perhaps this is also what we can attempt if we want to be wise, to in our little way, not to be trapped, not to feel trapped in the immediate moment. We take part in everything, and yet not be swept away by appearances, by how things turn out, because you know that there is a greater wisdom that is at work, and it's not for us to judge. So she always sits uncompanioned because she is the all. There is no second in the eternal calm. All-seeing, motionless, sovereign, and alone. This all-encompassing grace that sustains, that upholds, that is constantly at work, and that never leaves. Because if this were not, there would be no universe. There would be no creation. There, knowledge needs not words to embody idea. It's far above the mind. In the world of mind, which is an instrument of knowledge, idea is some first projection or attempt to move towards knowledge. You formulate it in a particular way. It is not as precise as thought, in a way you could say. It's an emanation from the word knowledge. knowledge moves. For instance, you say, I want to know what is truth or what is freedom. So my mind formulates my notion, my idea of freedom. Then that idea of freedom, which is a big word, vast, not so precise, becomes more clearly, you might say, divided into, if you do this, then you are free. If you are like this, then you are free. So the idea becomes formulated into thoughts. But they're part of the same, you might say, family of attempt to know. But it's the intellect that has the idea. The idea is the origin of the word ideal. It's a perfect attempt. The thought tries to formulate it. But there, knowledge does not need to manifest itself into ideas, which we try to put forth in as ideals. This is the ideal thing, this is what we should be. And then how to do it, your thought will say, maybe this way, maybe that. Therefore, idea, seeking a house in boundlessness. This is the house. When you have a clear formulation, you have different philosophies, different schools of thought, different kinds of religions, of advising, this is the solution, this is the, if you have a problem. All these are where it seeks to find a house, settles down. Then that house sometimes becomes very, very old, breaks down later. Therefore, idea, seeking in the world of mind a house. In your brain, you have ability to create conceptions, notions, ideas. Then you put them into precise formulas. Weary of its homeless immortality, asks not in thought's brilliant cell, carved brilliant cell, to rest. There, idea is not, thought is not. Otherwise, in our world, idea wants to take a final form in, as he calls it, thought's carved brilliant cell. It's a cell, yet you are trapped in that. You have like a school of thought, a school of philosophy, a school of religion. It becomes absolutely cut and dried. Whereas the word idea is much vaster, and then it becomes narrower as it comes down into our world of the more, you might say, mind that likes to be precise. If it is precise, it becomes narrow, it becomes clear, but it loses its flexibility, it loses its universality. And therefore, when it comes down into our mental world, a vaster thought, a vaster idea becomes something that has only one grasp, catches one aspect of truth, whose single windows, clipped outlook on things, sees only a little arc of God's vast sky. That is exactly what we do in all our philosophy. We catch one little aspect of truth and make of that the whole truth. It is like saying, I am inside a room, I have one window, from that window I see a little square of blue, and I say the sky is that little square of blue. I am right, and yet I am totally wrong, because I have to come out of my room and I see the infinite spaces that little blue is just a little portion of a much vaster sky. That is where the human mind gets into conflicts. Different minds get into conflicts with one another. Each mind is trying to make one formulation of truth. Another mind makes its formulation of truth. And it is not always truth versus falsehood, it is truth versus truth. Different formulas of truth. And each one is so sure of itself. So you have really so many different, even wars have taken place in the name of religion and thought. Because you're so sure that what you believe is the one and only truth. If you are wise, then you can come out of this. This is what has happened to Ashwapati. He is not bound by any formula. Sri Aurobindo is not bound by any formula. In fact, if you read anything of Sri Aurobindo, you will find that he looks at everything from different angles all the time. He takes up a subject, he looks at it from one angle, then a third, second, and a third, and a fourth. He is always making a synthesis. He is always creating something so rounded. It is not clear cut, narrow, sharp. And yet, he doesn't deny the truth of anything. He embraces all things.
So that his sentences become
Huh?
So that his sentences become 10 and 20 lines. Trying to cover all the aspects.
So the boundless with the boundless, their consorts. The boundless of the consciousness of the seeker becomes one with the boundlessness of the eternal. The seeker and the sought, the one who is really the rishi, has become one with that which he is seeking for. While there, one can be wider than the world. While there, one is one's own infinity. The finite is the infinite. It is the infinite that becomes the finite. That's why the finite can become the infinite. The divine becomes the human, so that the human can become the divine. His center was no more in earthly mind. So this is the change, the progressive opening that is happening to the seeker. A power of seeing silence filled his limbs. Seeing silence, it's a beautiful phrase. It's not some form of lethargy or stillness even, but of conscious silence. That's why it is undisturbed. When one is totally conscious of, one is undisturbed. This was Mother's, I believe, last New Year message. When you are conscious of the whole world at the same time, then you can become conscious of the divine. So the sense of oneness, the identification of the all. His center was no more in earthly mind. A power of seeing silence filled his limbs, caught by a voiceless white epiphany. Epiphany is a revelation of light. White, not just pure, but it is as if, you see, out of the white, the many colors break out. Out of the many colors, he is going back to the original integrality of all that is So as if all is gathered into that one original ray, the white light. The white light is the Divine Mother's light. Into a vision that surpasses forms. This is very difficult for us to understand, to see that, because our vision is accustomed to focus on forms. To be able to see what? See the all. See that which is invisible. See that which has no limits. So that it is that experience of wisdom, the sight that has gone beyond the search for knowledge and has become one with the light, one with the truth, into a living that surpasses life. All these manifestations of body and life and form and mind, all this, he has gone beyond. He neared the still consciousness sustaining all. So this is the realization of Ashwapati. He's going back to the origin. This is the tapasya, this is from below going back like a ray returning to its parent sun. Undisturbed, unmoving. Okay? All this is not so easy for us to even grasp, because we're still far, far in the world of thought and body and life and mind. But this is how much he has done for us, and she has done for us. So maybe there could be a beginning, an attempt. Okay.